I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the project that I have proposed to the European Union and for which I have received Marie Curie funding now, so which I will be performing over the next 3 years. It's a 3-year project. It's a Marie Curie Global Fellowship, which is slightly different from the normal fellowship in that it's together with institutes outside of Europe. And I'll be working 50% there, which is my host institutes in Canada that are listed on the slide, and EWAG. So the title, you always need a fancy acronym for the European Union funding. The title I gave is MOVE-NBS, which stands for Model Validation and Evaluation Procedures for Integrated Nature-Based Solution Planning Support Systems. And I'll explain to you what that means over the next 7 minutes. So yeah, the overall aim is listed here, which I will not read out to you until the end of this slide. So the object of my research is planning support systems. Now, planning support systems are spatial computer tools that are aimed at helping urban planners or spatial planners to take better decisions. And the application field of my work is nature-based solutions. So I'm looking at planning support systems for the implementation of nature-based solutions. Now, nature-based solutions are distributed, often green infrastructures that are aimed at urban water management in this case. And the problem with PSS, also for nature-based solutions, but any type of PSS really, is that they're very hard to validate because unlike normal models like hydrological models, PSS don't actually output anything directly measurable in the field. So you can't go out and compare the outcomes of your PSS to something that you measure in the field, and therefore it's hard to validate, and most people therefore don't validate them. So this is a problem that I want to tackle. Then the methodology that I'm using for the data gathering is from operational research, MCDA. But it's not only used to gather the data for this project, but it's also a part of the PSS that I have developed during my PhD, which is called SANTO, Spatial Suitability Analysis Tool, which presents suitability maps with a color coding from green to red, identifying locations that are more and less suitable for the implementation of nature-based solutions. And this is one of those examples where it's very hard to validate because you can't go out, walk through your city and see what the suitability is. So how do you actually validate these tools? So that's why the aim of this project, as written here, is to establish performance criteria and test validation procedures to develop a comprehensive and widely accepted framework that allows for holistic validation of integrated PSS for NBS planning. All right, so how am I going to do this? I have 3 objectives. The first one is to come up with a list of procedures, of potential procedures and evaluation criteria to test PSS. So that's the first objective. And this list should be agreed on by experts in the field. Then the second objective is to empirically test the highest potential options that come out of objective 1 in real world projects. And then the third one is to synthesize all this information and create a framework for validation of PSS. And of course, these objectives are supported by work packages. I'll go into detail of each of them, so you don't have to read them now, but just note the color coding that I've used. So the work packages are here in the rectangles. So the green ones refer to work packages related to the object of my research, which is PSS. Yellow refers to the method, MCDA, and blue refers to the application field of NBS. All right, so the first objective, which was to establish potential evaluation criteria and validation methodologies or procedures. So the first step would be to do a literature review and see what's out there already or what people have suggested, to come up with a master list of these performance criteria and validation processes that we can take on board. And this would be then the input to an MCDA, which I'm planning to do with at least 20 modeling experts, both from academia as well as from practice. So I'll do an MCDA with them to elicit the importance of the different criteria from the master list, and then to rank potential procedures of validation using these preferences for the performance criteria. So the output of this MCDA effort would then be a short list of validation criteria and processes that I will use in the next step to test in real life. So that takes me to the second objective, where I'm going to test these procedures. Now I need, of course, a tool to test it on. So my plan is to use the tool that I've developed for my PhD, among others, and to prepare it, to sort of redevelop it to make it suitable for testing in these case studies. And these case studies, I'm planning to use existing projects in 3 different areas. So Canada, as I'm working with Canadian collaborators, Europe, as that's where I'm based, and in Australia, because this is where I know of existing projects and I have a lot of connections there for my PhD. And so I'm tagging on to existing projects to implement PSS, so existing projects of NBS implementation. So municipalities that are currently implementing NBS and wanting to do some decision support for that. So I'm planning to then, for each of these projects, organize 2 workshops to implement these planning support tools and to test those validation procedures. And I'm gonna then collect data from the workshops themselves and also from surveys following the workshop with the participants, as well as semi-structured interviews. And then finally, I'll integrate all that knowledge that I've gathered over those previous 2 objectives to create a validation framework for academia, as well as some guidelines for practice, so for practitioners to help them validate their results from these kind of exercises. So that concludes what I want to tell you, and yeah, at least you can now stop recording, and then I'm open to your questions, comments, and suggestions.